Welcome to another episode of StuTube, guys. Bitcoin continues toying with the traders' emotions by chopping sideways, but the price action hasn't actually been doing anything too crazy when you zoom in. Basic chart structure has actually been respected quite well recently, as long as you aren't married to any particular idea, and as long as you're TPing along the way if you're taking leverage positions, rather than looking for that home run, more specifically that home run all-time high breakout type of a setup. I mean, yes, I agree that Bitcoin's going to have higher prices in the future, but we don't know when that is, and resistance is resistance until it's broken. So, yeah, basically just playing each trade setup range by range, taking some profits and leaving positions partially open as well, because if that home run does come, then I want to be able to catch it too, and that goes for either direction. I have been favoring the short side of things a lot more recently. Anybody who has ever listened to my videos in the last 2 months knows that. And I'll continue to feel that way, but I'm open to the idea of looking for some long scalps as well. I'm just more so favoring the short side. I'm quicker to pull the trigger on the short side of things, but absolutely open to the possibility of higher targets. So I want to take a look at a few different charts. In Bitcoin, I want to look at the weekly, as always, zoom into the 4 hour, and then of course checking out some degen timeframes, more so the 1 minute and 5 minute, and see if maybe we can find some sort of a live scalp setup. Like yesterday, we had one with Ton when I did a stream on Financial Summit. So far, it's played out great. The reason, and I was just talking with this. Or about this with you guys right before starting the stream here, but for those who are going to watch this later on my YouTube channel, basically I was just talking about I did just close 20% of my short position from this blue dotted line here at $5.53. Well, $5.537 actually. That is my average entry on my short position on Ton. And basically I was saying yesterday that, and we didn't have some of these signals here yesterday, but while I was streaming, we basically had this lower high and this lower low. So I had this Fibonacci pulled because I love using that auto charting tools for a little bit of confluence, and quite often we'll see that type of setup come into play. So that's basically where I started laddering into a position. Right at the 786 is where I had one open yesterday during the stream. And then shortly after the stream, we actually went a little higher and I got another entry in. So my average entry got pulled up very slightly. So that's why that's there. And yeah, just before starting the stream, I just closed 20% of it because there was just a few things that were catching my attention. One with the Wave Master indicator here. We were just seeing signs that, hey, momentum was going to the upside again. We got these bullish pivot or bullish reversals, whatever you want to call them there, for a potential move to the upside. And we did also have this pivot point. So even though this is a lower low, I still think the trend is to the downside. And that's why I left 80% of my short open for now, but my stop loss is in a very small profit at this point. So I have no risk on this play. And I am hoping that it gets down towards my next target. My real target is basically this 214, as always with the Stuber setup, but I always front run my targets a little bit. That's why I have this green line here with an alert on it. That's just to let me know that half of my position is going to be closed if we get to that level. But other than that, just I saw the potential that we might get some sort of a bounce here, and just in case I'm wrong, I still want to pay myself a little bit. So I decided, especially right now, I might not be paying attention if I'm live streaming here, so I'm mostly going to be looking at Bitcoin here, but I just wanted to protect myself, so that's why I basically closed just a little bit. And like I said, stop loss is in a profit just above this structure back here, so very small profit just to pay my fees and get a couple more percent kind of a thing. But yeah, so that trade played out beautifully. Hopefully you guys who were with me live, hopefully you were able to capitalize on that. There was a little added risk that we came and tested that pocket again. I talked about that last night. The fact that, we had that initial rejection, which is where I initially did take the short. And the fact that we came back up here, it was getting a little riskier just because, we were testing it again. At that point, we're starting to tap away at resistance, right? But we did just end up finding basically a double top here, end up getting a little bit of a rejection here. So that's why I ended up getting into that position. And yeah, just like always, basically looking to get towards that 214, which would basically be the opposite 786. I know a lot of you guys, this is going to be repetitive, but I love to go over this every single stream for new people, or new people to my streams, anything like that. And it's just good because the more you see it, the more you understand it. But the 214 comes from the opposite 786, right? If I was looking to long this, I'd be more so looking for a 786 support bounce. And that, well, actually it lines up exactly perfect. I guess it's the exact same size range, right, from where it was pulled the opposite way. So the 786 and the 214 line up perfectly there. And that's why that's my target, basically. Bitcoin right now, we're finding a little bit of support. So here's something that I was considering right before starting this stream here, is that technically, and this is very tight, but as I look at market structure, so this was the lower high that I was watching in the last couple streams that I did in the last couple days. And that was basically because I had this low here and we got this little bounce and then a lower low. So it's very micro analyzed, but that was just the very immediate trend. So that was the lower high that I was interested in. I did play this short down here, which I also went over in my Financial Summit stream, but I ended up taking partial profits during that stream yesterday and bumping up my stop loss to break even. And that unfortunately did get stopped out at break even on this rally to the upside before continuing down like this. So yeah, it's unfortunate that I got stopped out on that one, but it was at break even and I had taken a little bit of profits. So just like what I'm looking at with TON, right? Same type of a scenario, but so basically after that, this was our low, and this one we actually set a slightly lower low here. So that's when I'm bumping down my confirmed lower high. I'm actually going to bump it down to here because that is the highest point between the two. To be honest, in this case, it does not matter at all because either way, this structure over here ended up breaking it, right? Whether this was the lower high or this was the lower high, this structure, we did end up closing some candle bodies on the 5 minute above that and then pulling back is normal, right? That's one thing that I talk about every single stream is that, you know, people love looking for those breakout trades and people assume that if we don't go straight up from here after breaking structure, that it's now bearish. Well, no, quite often we just break structure and then we see some kind of a pullback, right? So I'm tossing around the idea right now of taking a little bit of a long snipe on Bitcoin if we trade down into these fibs here. It's very possible we front ran them here, but we still do have, you know, we have a little bit of downside structure technically here because same thing, we have this low, and this is again very micro analyzing, but that's what we're here for, right? This is our low and we got slightly lower here. Highest point between the two would be right here. So that's basically the lower high on the very immediate 5 minute trend, right? So it's possible that we're still going to get a push down to here. Even if we get down to here, being this is on the 5 minute chart, I would like to zoom into the 1 minute and see some sort of a lower high break, just as a little bit of added confluence to the idea, because I'm having a hard time pulling the trigger on longs lately. Just a personal bias right now. I would rather almost wait for a bounce and then some sort of a short opportunity, right? And just talking about the potential bullish side of this one, right, is this would be a classic Stuber setup. This is a valid Stuber long setup, right, in this fib pocket here, with how this structure is right now. Much like on the 4 hour, the same thing, right? Every time we end up breaking, and I made it very simply laid out here, this is just fact. This is not personal bias. Like everybody who's a moon boy right now, please set your bias aside and bear with me here while I say this. This is a series of lower lows and lower highs. That's all there is to it. This is ever since this, I mean, obviously we had this breakdown here, but we just have a series of lower lows on the trend. And I know this is going to get repetitive as well, but pulling from where we end up topping out down to where we break structure. And we just always seem to get that, you know, right when everybody starts FOMOing into resistance, that's where we end up finding resistance, because resistance is resistance until it's broken, right? But everyone loves getting very bullish into resistance, just like very bearish into support. And the same people who are FOMOing long at these levels are the same people FOMOing short at these levels. And although I understand the idea with FOMOing short here because that is actually a bearish structure break. So I agree that's a very bearish sign, but understanding that a sign takes time, and the signal doesn't necessarily mean the entry, right? Just like with and that's why my StuberFIB setups work out so well, as far as risk, improved risk management, is because you're waiting for that structure break. There's your signal, but you're still waiting for that pullback to get your entry, right? And that takes time, and people have a very hard time waiting in crypto. And so, to see this on a 4-hour, that structure break, yeah, very bearish signal. I was very bearish at that time, but I was willing to wait for that bounce before getting, too bearish again. And then same thing back here, we end up setting another lower low. We pull a new Fibonacci, something like so. We end up getting rejected, the exact same fib pocket. Everyone got very bullish here. That's when Trump was having his speech. Trump and Elon having their speech was actually a little bit later. But yeah, this was basically that Bitcoin convention. Everyone was super bullish, again, going right into that resistance, and just a perfect sell the news event. And that led us to setting a lower low. And that just means what's the highest point between our last two lower lows, right? Our lower low and our lowest low. The highest point between the two is still up here. So until that structure breaks, this is still technically a downtrend. And I know there's smaller levels that have been broken, yes, but on the macro structure here, we just have a series of lower lows and lower highs. So basically between here down at 49,000, basically up to 70,000. That is the range that we're currently in, and we're gonna have to see what happens. I personally just have a feeling, well, basically here's what it is. I would rather play the chart for what's actually there already, rather than thinking, well, what if there's a break of this trend though? Well, if there's a break of the trend, then we start playing the trend the other way. That's fine. Yes, we might not catch it as early as someone who randomly guesses, but who has gotten wrecked a million times along the way, right? So that's why, as it stands right now, this is bearish structure. So that's where I'm still willing to entertain the idea we have a bounce. Like, I was honestly thinking we were going up towards 68K, because that would be the same as the last three big swing rejections, right? That's where we would end up getting right to the 886, would be right around, well, 70 or 67.6K, let's call it. That's where I kind of thought we were going to get to. We never quite made it. We actually never even quite made the 786 at 65.5. We basically topped out right at 65. That's just another sign of weakness, that this relief rally, as everybody's calling it, that, hey, this was our capitulation event. Honestly, when you zoom out, this is not capitulation. This is just going back to the bottom of the range. There was nothing crazy about this price action. Yes, it was a lot of selling. I don't think I would consider it a capitulation of any kind. And the structure is just still to the downside at this point. There's just no arguing that. Yes, that can change. And when it changes, I will totally start looking to play the bullish side more aggressively. But I'm more so just looking to, the way I've been playing the market recently is I'm trying to basically get into scalp shorts. And from there, I leave at least half my position open, and I'm hoping to just catch a runner. And if it starts running, then I just start nibbling profits, like an additional, 10% off the remaining order kind of a thing at a time, just to pay myself a little bit along the way. But yeah, the running positions I'm looking for are more so to the downside rather than the upside, just because of this market structure on the 4-hour. Like the 4-hour, the auto charting tools does show higher lows and higher highs, but just as I'm looking at a full macro view here, I'm just not agreeing with that. But on the smaller time frame, yes, it's possible we find a bounce right now as well, right? Because technically we could pull a fib from there, from the auto charting tools. We could pull a fib there, and we technically did test the 786 basically perfectly. And starting to see a little bounce. So it's very possible if we were to end up hitting the range target of that, we would end up hitting the 214 at about $63,000. So yeah, there's absolutely the possibility we bounce still from here. But something to be fully aware of here is just really looking at this structure here. Notice this. So this yellow line I have here, this is basically on this little uptrend. This is what obviously would have been our high, and this would be our higher high, right? So that was our bullish break. Since the lowest point between the two is here. That's why I had the Fibonacci pulled like that. But notice what level, where our order block was, basically that pushed us through this little bit of resistance here, right? That's why I mapped out this yellow box here. And notice that we lost that level, and then we came up below it, and we respected it from, respecting that support as resistance here. So there is the possibility that we don't end up going back up there. If we do break through this and reclaim this yellow box, I mean, we'd technically have, a potential bearish setup, something like this. If we traded up to that Stuber pocket, it would be basically 63.4K up to 64.2K, something like that. And seeing a rejection there would not really surprise me all that much either. But honestly, if we end up breaking this resistance, there's just, no matter how I look at it, basically, Bitcoin has a lot of work to do. There's just resistance levels everywhere right now, in my opinion, because anywhere I pull one of these fibs, I can just notice that, oh, if that was invalidated, there's just a bigger one right around the corner, right? Because if we end up breaking this one, that's where we have my major resistance. Like, this is all just a very small, this would be, this type of move, that's just a smaller range inside the bigger range, but the full on range is this lower high to this lower low. And basically, just to show you each StuberFIB, here would be pulling this way looking for resistance. That's why I have that red box outlined, and pulling looking for support. This is a potential bullish scenario that I would love to see, is if we end up getting rejected here and we come down towards my green box here. So basically 52.5K down to 50.9K. That would be a beautiful spot to start seeing bullish divergences and stuff like that. I think that would be absolutely beautiful territory for a nice long. The one problem I have with that is, so I would only take it serious if there was a nice big RSI divergence kind of a thing as we approach this level. One thing I don't like about it, though, is that it's not an actual StuberFIB setup. This is just, 786, 886 fibs do get respected a lot, but we don't have an uptrend backing up this this theory that this would be good support, right? Because we still do, since we had this low and this lower low, this would be our lower high, we haven't broke any structure to the upside. Yes, you could argue that, hey, here's a micro, the immediate trend, we sure did. But on the big picture where I have that range pulled and why I have these resistance blocks, we haven't broke that yet. So technically, the bearish side of things, this is confirmed as a StuberFIB setup. This is not. So that's my one concern about trying to play that support down at, like I said, 50.6, 50.5, all the way to like 52.5 kind of a thing. Yeah, I'm going to be watching those levels. I absolutely think it's possible we get some kind of a bounce, but I also think that, we continuously, we just continue to set lower lows and lower highs. At what point does the floor just give out because, hey, structures to the downside, which way are we more likely to get a, an actual breakout is probably the direction we're already trending, right? And just to show you, even on the weekly, right? I know this Fibonacci scares a lot of people, but here's a level that I was watching basically is this yellow box here, because this is kind of the same thing, right? At one point we did end up finding some great support right around this level. We end up dropping it. We reclaim this box. This was a great opportunity basically for bulls to pull the trigger and start carrying on with some momentum, but we ended up losing that again. And after losing it again, we came back up to this level, and now we're respecting it with our candle bodies as resistance. And that's just a little bit alarming to me because we've already done this on this trend once. If you look back here, this is where we actually lost our uptrend. Okay, I know a lot of people are blaming Germany selling and stuff like that for why we got this big down selling pressure and stuff like that. This structure was actually broken at the start of April. That's why I've been bearish for a long time. And, you know, I know it seems like, oh, it hasn't been that bearish that long. It does take a while for these weekly patterns to play out. And that's where our structure broke. That's where we lost this support, right? And you can see it a lot clearer. Sometimes I like to take off the wicks on candles, especially on larger time frames. And you can really see the structure very clearly here, that we lost this higher low structure here, and then we just started getting rejected at StuberFIBs. I would still ideally have wicks on, but same thing even with the candle bodies. You can see that's where we got to, right? The 786, 886. After that, we break structure again. Where do we end up getting resistance? Right around that 886, right? So the fact that we lost that, that's just where I have the same kind of box, right? If I'm going to do a yellow box like this, and notice we had the exact same thing happen. We reclaimed it. Great opportunity for the bulls to pull the trigger, but they ended up losing that box again. And then when they came back to that level, respected it as resistance, right? So exactly what we're seeing right now with this box from right here. It does not need to play out the same, but right now it looks a lot like what happened up here, right? And that basically, it was a big rejection. So if we see that again, if we see that type of a move again like we got here, that's going to create another lower low. And that's all theoretical at this point. Again, I don't like to play it like that's already in effect, because that does not have to happen. And that's why I'm looking for those bullish reversals as well, with the proper divergences and stuff, if we get to those proper fib levels. But until then, this is just something to be cautious of, that, hey, if that happens, understand that the chart was just predicting that, hey, we're still in a downtrend. And if we end up doing that, let's say we do set a lower low, and we start coming back up to these levels, just remember how bullish everyone's going to get right into resistance again. And this is theoretical. We're just pretending that's a pivot point. But it would be something like that, right? Right as we come up to the 786, 886, that's where everyone's going to get mega bullish again. And it would just be the perfect level to end up bringing in a lower high. Yes, that trend is going to break eventually, but basically the trend is your friend until the end, as they say, right? And again, just to go with this downward structure, the RSI is still trending to the downside as well. See, even the RSI is respecting technical analysis very well. And that's one of the main reasons why I got bearish as well, because after that structure break, we got this mega reversal RSI divergence here from extremely overbought conditions down to the 70 level. That's a very exact divergence that I have looked for and I have traded for years. It's one of my favorite setups. So when I saw it on the weekly chart, I just had to get bearish. I would be kicking myself if, we absolutely dumped from there and I never did anything about it. Let's say I never changed my bullish bias. I never took any profits off of my spot positions that I was, accumulating down here. If I didn't take any of that at this level with this my favorite pattern to short, and this is not financial advice, because everyone does look at things different and there's a chance you look at this differently than me. But basically when I see this type of a setup where we lose structure like that, where we lose a higher low structure, we get a Fibonacci pullback to the 786, 886. Look how absolutely perfect that is. Like perfectly to the 886. Basically when we have this RSI divergence, this structure break, this Fibonacci pullback, I take that trade 100% of the time that I catch it. If I see that, I take it. When it's on the 1 minute or the 5 minute, I take it. Again, everybody looks at things differently. So, I encourage you to back test things before actually putting any money behind anyone else's theories, because you can always be looking at things wrong. I know quite often I actually see people post things across social media quite often that'll say like, oh, here's this StuberFIB setup, and when I look at it, it's like, that's actually not a StuberFIB setup. I get it, it's a 786 886, but it's not actually how I would have pulled it, kind of a thing. So it does happen sometimes, and that's why I think back testing is so important. But me personally, when I see this setup, that trifecta, the structure break, the fib pullback, that divergence, that's my favorite setup. I traded on the 1 minute, the 5 minute, the hourly, and to see it on the weekly like this, I mean, that's quite often a reversal signal. And I don't think, I want to be clear about this, guys, I don't think the market cycle's over. I think we will see higher prices, but I think this is going to be a much bigger reversal than a lot of people are willing to give it credit for. And I think it's going to take longer than expected as well. I don't think it's going to play out quick, but I think we are going to see some much lower price targets. Basically, if we lose support again, we're targeting this range back here, and that would basically be, you know, I'd be looking at something like this from basically 45,000 down to 40,000 basically. We do, at least on the weekly chart, have some sort of consolidation at that level. So there is some support that I would hope to find a good bounce at that level. And we'll have to see what the market does from there. If we lose that level, if the market just cuts right through it and extreme panic sets in and we flip that support into resistance, I mean, on the way up, there was no structure built here. So if we lose whatever structure we did have here, I mean, that's a straight shot down towards the macro 786, which would be like 28K. Now, I want to be clear about this. I personally think it would take some sort of a black swan event to push us there, something to panic the market, to really spook the market. But you know what? The chart is just saying theoretically that it could be on the table. You know, if this was a 1 minute or a 5 minute chart, that's basically the type of reversal I would be looking at, would be that, hey, especially with this RSI divergence, I would be looking at that pullback to the 786, 886, and unfortunately on the weekly chart, that's around 28K down to 22K. So again, I'm not saying it's probable, but understand that anything is possible. The market does not give a fuck what we think, and it does not give a shit about our feelings. So that's all there is to it. Anything is possible. And those of us who have been in Bitcoin for more than a cycle, you understand that Bitcoin can do anything and it will be unexpected, but you know, it's just possible is all. Taking a look back at Bitcoin, looking at the 5 minute, you know, there's a potential short setup very close that would have a very tight invalidation. You're kind of playing a much smaller range. But just looking at this immediate downtrend, even though we're getting towards my 786, if we just look at this, we have a low, lower low. This would be our lower high, like I was talking about before. We could technically pull a fib, something like this, basically from 59,660 down to 58,660. We haven't quite tested the 786 yet at 59,440, but there is a potential setup there with tight invalidation. It's just like I was saying before, there's just a chance that since we are getting near that, you know, the bigger 786, 886 here, there is possible that we're just front running that and going. But I do think that it would make more sense that we would actually test this 786 at about 59 or 58,470 US dollars approximately. I think it makes sense that we would test that, but we'll see what happens. So basically, maybe we get something like this. I mean, our range target would be this 214 fib, which would be, you know, how big of a range is that? That's from 59.4 down to 58.9. So, you know, a little $500 range, basically. But then again, if I entered something like that, I don't know if I'm going to take that yet. What's the auto charting tool saying? You know what? Screw it. I'll take a little short. I'll ladder in some little positions up along here. invalidation just above here a little bit. Just in case, just a little guy, just in case we're gonna end up trending back down, or even just like I said, get that little scalp, something like that. But ideally, it's more something like that. Where's my other device here? 1 second. How's my ton short doing? Ooh, I should really mark my stop loss just so I pay attention to it. I might regret that, but like I said, I just want to protect myself and make sure that I don't take a loss on that position, basically. You know what? I am gonna change that. I'm gonna go. Whoops. 533. Basically right at break even, because since I paid myself a little bit, at least I do have nothing to worry about there. And since that is just above the 786 as well, so just in case we just tap right up to the 786, I just want to be a little further than that. There we go. Actually, let me check what are the other indicators saying before I set these orders. I don't know if I like that. Contemplating. One thing I don't like about this potential rejection up here is just that we do clearly have upwards trending sell signals and buy signals. And quite often that's what I really love doing with this trend master indicator, is just making sure that signals are kind of trending the same direction. It just kind of helps notice which way it's trending, right? So I don't take, me personally, I don't take each individual signal on its own. I mean, yes, a lot of them play out great, but I more so use them just for spotting a trend and stuff like that. Yeah, you know what? I'll set some orders. I might regret that, but... Nine 397. Five 2 2. 618. Stop loss 59,888 sounds good. All right, we'll see if we end up bouncing up there, or if we just frickin' rip right through. Another reason I'm okay taking this, so yes, the sell signals and buy signals are to the upside. we do have these P's are trending to the downside, like this bullish one here and this bullish one here. And by bullish, I just mean that it's below the price. Those, you know, this was a lower one, and that's, you know, going with the sell trend as well. With the auto charting tools, we do have this lower low signal, and we did actually get lower than that. So I think there's going to be a new lower low. It's a lagging indicator, but I could see it printing relatively soon here. So just pulling that fib from the highest point between the two, right? Because just like how I normally look at naked charts, low, lower low, lower high, that's where I'm pulling my fib, right? Basically looking for something like that. I got to catch up on some chat here. I've been kind of in my own world trying to think about this here, so let me just catch up a little bit. But yeah, let's see what things are gonna do. Let's actually zoom into the 1 minute now, as we love to do. Let's see what the 1 minute's saying. Seen some lower highs. Lower high. Seeing some weakness a little early. Okay, going way back up to the start of the questions here. So what is the value of using oscillators as indicators? So like the RSI, for example, would you consider that an oscillator, or are you more so considering the like the MDX ALGO ones? Because the RSI, for example, just to kind of show you, and this would go for a lot of other oscillators as well, but like what I was talking about when we got this big divergence here, I mean, you would spot this on many different indicators. But basically what we're doing here is we're trading back up towards the same level, but this is the strength, right? Relative strength index. So the fact that we came back up to the same level, but we had significantly less buying pressure. So there was no reason to really blast through it. So that's one way that I personally like to use them, is more so noticing divergences and stuff with them. Because yes, so often they move hand in hand with the price, right? And you can't necessarily make anything out of it. That's where I myself, like personally, I mostly go by market structure. I go for basic horizontal levels and structure breaks, and from there Fibonacci's, because I find they're just so structured and you don't have to kind of toss around the ideas of which levels are going to be important or not, because they're kind of laid out for you that way. But then after that, I more so use indicators, oscillators, you name it, for more of a second opinion, right? So like, let's say this one down here, the wave master, for example. You know, just sometimes it brings up some nice warnings that, hey, volatility is looming, right? We start to see these blue dots forming, just something that it's throwing on your radar that volatility might be looming. And then just, you know, it all comes down to preference. It all comes down to back testing, you know, certain things that you look at and stuff like that. But I mostly look at price structure. I'm not huge on oscillators and stuff. I more so check them as a second opinion, see if there's anything that really jumps out at me, a crazy divergence or anything like that. But honestly, I'm not the best guy to learn about oscillators from, because I don't use them a ton. I've recently just started using this Wave Master, and there's some things I definitely like about it, but it always comes down to me looking at the chart without much for indicators first. The only thing BTC has going for it is not making a lower low. Yeah, the fact that it did actually, I mean, here, the wick did make a lower low. But yes, most of the time, I mean, candle bodies matter way more, right? If anything, this almost looks like a liquidity grab, right? Order block, I'm just basically looking at what price level basically held for a structure break is the way I look at it. Like, you know, back here when we ended up blasting through resistance, our order block would be, you know, this, I'd actually say it's this whole range that I have outlined here. After we end up breaking this high here, because this is a little doji, a little pause in the trend there. After we break above that, then I'm looking at that as an order block, just because it's kind of where the price, basically the bears were able to push the price only that far before getting blasted right through resistance, kind of a thing. So that's how I'm looking at them. Same with up here, right? Same thing when we ended up right before we ended up closing these candle bodies a little higher than these ones here. Just this is kind of where the bears stood their ground, or the bulls stood their ground against the bears, basically. That's where that red candle ended up closing at, and then we ended up actually closing candle bodies higher, setting a higher high. So that's that's what I'm looking at as the order block. And as soon as we lose that, that's when we started our downtrend, right? Problem is now everyone thinks that it's like 2019, which means it has to not be like that. 100%, right? The market's always changing, and everyone's always. The thing is, most people are going to continue being late to trends of things, right? It's the same reason why people FOMO long into resistance, short into support. You know, if you you know, a lot of us were around to, I actually never caught it. I ended up getting in late, but I remember that 2016 market cycle where altcoins just went absolutely nuts. Every altcoin you'd ever look up, they were all going up several multiplies every night, basically. It was wild, and that's basically what drew me in. Obviously FOMO'd the top my first cycle, just like most people, but that's fine, right? We learn from our mistakes. But then everyone was expecting that again the next cycle, but then it ended up being like NFTs and stuff like that. So each cycle kind of has its unique characteristic. And that's another reason why I'm thinking too, like, you know, even with the halving, yes, with the halving, generally, like, the halving is one fundamental that just from a straight up supply and demand factor, it is bullish, right? It's a bullish fundamental. But the thing is, each halving is technically getting smaller, right? Yes, the mining amount is also getting smaller, but it's becoming less and less impactful on the total supply. So maybe there's something we're missing there, and maybe the market doesn't even care about that anymore. You know, I don't think that's true. I want to be clear about that, but that's just a way that of looking at that. You know, maybe I'm understanding things incorrectly. Maybe the big players don't care about that near as much as we think they do. You know, maybe it's just been too easy to just buy at the halving, and this cycle that doesn't happen, kind of a thing. Like, who knows, right? Just because the market cycles do change every cycle. See, I think a lot of people are expecting one push lower, but I think that everyone will be very quick to say that that's the bottom. And I think if we get another push lower, that it's going to be significantly lower than what a lot of people are expecting, even those ones who are calling for another push. If anything, I could see us getting some strong support between that 40,000 and then just setting, you know, going towards all-time highs again, and getting a harsh rejection. And this actually takes a very long time to play out, right? That would be several months. But how beautiful would that be? Let's say even a little bit higher, right? Get something like this, trade down to this support box, end up getting back up to this level, and then get a bigger nuke for, let's say, some sort of a black swan event. That would be wild. But again, guys, these are just theories. I'm trading the chart based on what's actually there, not on that. But it's just a good way to look ahead and just kind of reevaluate things, just take a step back and consider what are the possibilities, because nobody knows for sure. And I would rather be prepared for anything, so that if that scenario does happen, if we find support down here and come up here and everyone's getting FOMO into all-time highs again and we set a lower high there, I want to be ready for that if that's actually going to happen. And again, it might not, but from a risk reward, okay, well, if I'm wrong, then I'm obviously getting bullish again very quickly. Whereas if I'm right, I mean, that's a massive move, right? And just thinking about these things ahead of time can really just help you have a level head. Like all of these sell-offs, when this market's been nuking and Twitter sentiment is so low and people, you can tell everybody's depressed and stuff like that. I flipped bearish with this, classic StuberFIB weekly setup with this divergence. That's what drew me to be more bearish on the midterm, and not the long term. I'm very bullish long term, but just as far as the midterm, I was willing to accept the possibilities that we may be in a downtrend. And I've never been more relaxed in the market. I genuinely do not give a shit which way this market goes at this point. We go lower, I'm going to trade the shit out of it to the downside. If we go higher, then you know what? I'll buy the little bit of spot that I ended up selling. I'll buy the rest of it back at a small loss, consider it a lost trade, and or just not, and just keep my profits. Whatever, I don't care. I was buying in much lower. I don't really care. Taking profits up here is fine too. But yeah, if we end up trading to the downside, yeah, when I'm saying I'm bearish and I'm saying that it's possible we go down to these levels, make no mistake, guys, my portfolio will get shit on, but my trading account isn't going to care. My trading account on this downtrend has been loving life. And if we trade down to these levels, there's not a lot of people who would be even willing to entertain that idea. And again, I don't think it will happen. But if it does, I understand that it's a possibility, and I'm willing to let positions run and stuff to try and catch something like that. And I will also be ready with limit orders all throughout this box if we lose this range. If we lose 40K, I am going to be setting orders basically from 30K to 20K. Not financial advice. That's just what I'm going to be doing. Because I think that if we do lose this 40K support, I think, like I said, it's basically a straight shot up here. It would be a straight shot down. And if we get that wick into this StuberFIB setup, I mean, we see how well those get respected on 1 minute and 5 minute charts, you guys. I see so many of you guys looking at those and showing them and having success with those and all that sort of stuff. If that's what it's doing on a 1 minute or a 5 minute chart, just understand what can happen on a weekly chart, right? We might get a beautiful, beautiful rally very aggressively. So if that happens, I don't think, if we drop into this fib pocket, I don't think it's going to be one of those, I'm going to wait and see how it acts there and decide from there. I'm going to let it play out for a few hours and then I'm going to decide what to do. No, I think you missed it. That's just a theory at this point. That's just a gut feeling. But I have a feeling it will be very short-lived if that happens. And I think that would end up having the springboard effect where it would be very bullish for the market. I think there would be a crazy reaction of FOMO, momentum, and all sorts of stuff. We would then break our downtrend, and then I think the market would go absolutely parabolic. But this is all theoretical at this point, you guys. That 1 minute isn't quite getting up to that fib pocket that I wanted. Still might. Yeah, we might not get a chance to catch this one. What's Ton doing? I would love to see Ton hit this target during this stream, but I don't know how much longer I'll be live here, and that could take a while. I mean, I've been in this trade for over 24 hours at this point, I think. That's ridiculous for a guy like me. So it could take 24 more. What strategy would I recommend to trade on higher time frames there, Shrek? I trade higher time frames with the same strategy, just with less leverage, because obviously your invalidations and everything are way further away. But I still look for the same thing, right? Like I was talking about on the 4 hour, when everyone was getting FOMO bullish, longing the hell out of resistance here. That was just a typical StuberFIB setup, the same as I trade the 5 minute or the 1 minute or anything, right? On the 4 hour, it did the exact same thing. I am more of a scalper myself, so I'm more so, the way I trade is more so looking at those on longer time frames and then zooming into shorter time frames and still trying to catch more of a scalp and hoping it turns into a runner, understanding that it might be a swing entry, right? But yeah, I basically don't change anything if I'm looking to trade a longer time frame. I'm still looking for those structure breaks and those pullbacks to those fib levels, the same type of RSI divergences. And that's actually what led me to be bullish down here. I actually, well, careful how I say that. This led me to be mega bearish, but I was willing to play the upside short term because, again, waiting for that pullback, right? There's my bearish signal because we closed below the lower low over here. There's our bearish signal, but I'm not FOMOing into that position. I'm not shorting right into support like that because I'm waiting for that pullback. Signal, entry. So that's kind of how I go about that. But yeah, like I said, I was willing to play the upside on that little rally, even though it was a bearish signal, because, and not just assuming we would trade to the upside and get a pullback, but there was actually something in the charts, was, again, that mega bullish RSI divergence, right? So we bottomed out here. We basically came down to the same level here. So here's where I pull my Fibonacci. So we get back to the 786. That's check mark 1. And then we have this, as we came back towards that, I'm going to say basically double bottom territory, right? As soon as we get to the 786, 886, I'm considering that basically double bottom territory. So when we're getting to the same level of support, but we have significantly more strength showing up on the RSI, that's why I consider this a very bullish scenario, but again, for the short term or for the midterm, because the bigger signal was bearish, but we had a smaller bullish signal. Just a way how I played both these swings, right? And I never held a position from here to here, down to here kind of a thing. But I did just change my trading bias, basically. Like down here, I switched bullish until we got up to these levels. Then I started flipping to being a little bit more cautious, and then started looking for short scalps. And I caught some beautiful shorts in this area. I remember the day it happened, I was at a barbecue, and I think my Bitcoin short hit like 750% or something crazy, just because, again, I was looking at more of a high leverage scalp, and then it really took off, and I had some of my position running, and that's why I leave some running, right? Just in case you catch those moves. So right now, as far as looking for a swing trade, unfortunately, there just wouldn't really be a setup because you're right in the middle of a range, right? Unless you wanted to play a smaller one like this, because I do see potential for finding support here due to that. But the thing is, that's just a small range inside the real range I'm watching. So invalidation of this, and you're just getting towards support of the bigger range anyways. So it's just kind of messy if you're doing that. Just catching up on some of the chat here. Yeah, is anyone else in any positions? Oh, man. Well, that's too bad that it's looking like we might have missed that opportunity. Never quite got to that 5-minute level I was hoping for. Oh, maybe we still will. I guess we might run to the downside bounce and get up to this level yet. It's very possible. Notice that a StuberFIB would have played out here. It just would have been really small, right? If we went from the lower high signal on the auto charting tools, I always talk about that strategy as well. Just pulling a pivot from there, or a fib rather, down to where we had bottomed out. And you obviously would have had this, it would have been a small move, but the range play did happen, right? I mean, if that's too small of a move and you're not happy with those profits, then you're just trying to play too small of a range. If that's how the fib pull is, that's what range you're playing, right? That's all there is to it. Besides the 786 and 886 and the RSI Divergence, what are other components of Stubers? One thing that I consider quite a bit, but it isn't necessarily criteria, would be with the trend master, like I was talking about, which direction signals are trending would affect which way I want to pull my fibs from, basically. So it does look like we had a lower buy signal come in. We don't have a lower sell signal yet, but that would basically give me reason to start pulling bearish StuberFIBs, for example. But that's not necessarily the criteria. That's just another thing I look for. The other thing that I look for proper StuberFIB is a structure break, right? So seeing like the loss of a lower high, or the loss of a higher low, for example, then I can start pulling bearish ones. If we regain lower high structure and we break above that, that's when I can start looking for bullish StuberFIBs. So like right here, technically, if I really wanted to zoom in on things here, here's an example of this. I don't actually consider a StuberFIB. My reasoning for that is because the last time I see any sort, just on this very immediate trend here, the only sort of support I see along the way is right here. Very brief, very micro analyzing, yes. But this would have been our low. We got a little bounce, came down, lower low. This would be the highest point between the two, right? So I'm basically looking at that as the lower high. So being we haven't broken that level, this would not actually be a valid StuberFIB. Yes, there's absolutely the possibility that we find support out of the box and take off. It's just, it doesn't meet the structure break, so it doesn't have that reversal signal on its side, kind of a thing. Hopefully that makes sense. Hey, I can't help it if I'm giggling at the chat. I had my performance enhancers before this. Oh, behave, you guys. Get along. Yeah, I see some of you guys are trading PopCat recently. I haven't. How's the volume on that? Is it actually pretty good? I'm kind of scared at trading those degen meme coins with leverage because I just feel like there's a chance for slippage, and that scares me. But man, there's some good volatility on those coins. Good volume on Bybit. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I guess Bybit probably would, right? When you get into some of those memers and those low caps on exchanges like Mexi and stuff like that, that's where I start to be a little bit cautious. That's actually where I got liquidated that one time, even though my stop loss was in a 5% profit. Left a sour taste in my mouth. And that's why I mostly trade Bitcoin, just because I know that there's good volume there. Very rarely do you see any sort of like nasty slippage on Bitcoin these days. Yeah, Ton just chilling sideways here. I do think it's possible that Ton does take a little move to the upside just because it did break this little resistance back here and is now forming support on that level. Could absolutely blast off and stop me out, but that's why I took some profits along the way just in case. I still really do think that we hit this target down here at some point, but just in case I'm wrong, right? Oh man, I'm really tempted to just FOMO a short here, but I'm gonna be disciplined. Unless technically broke that. Can we find another? Well, this would be such a small one. But it's potential for a little downside continuation. That's really trying to force things, but there's a potential scalp there. Yeah, I'll take a look at Popcat. Why not? Let me just bring up another chart here. Would that be the one? Oh boy, that is not the one. Here we go. That looks gooder. Speaking of words being difficult, this is much gooder. Low time frames, so looking at like the 5-minute, for example. Something going for Popcat right now, actually, when I zoom out on the 5-minute chart here, is that on this little downtrend, this would have been our low. We set a lower low. That would have been our lower high. We broke that. We have not broke below that range yet. So technically, this could be... This support is still technically here. It's looking weak because we never got that. Well, actually, so here's the thing with this setup, actually. What I do like about it, we did break this structure, and technically we could just be setting a slightly higher low. The thing that I don't like about this is we already had one reaction off this StuberFIB, and it did play out. If you notice, even these meme coins and stuff, same setup did play out, right? We had that structure break. We got our pullback to that fib. Beautiful laddered entry would have been perfect. And getting up to that range target and then seeing a rejection there. So the thing I don't like about this current setup is just that it's already happened once. So it's just a little bit of added risk. So the structure hasn't changed, but it's just added risk because at this point, we're tapping away at support, right? Whenever I play StuberFIBs, I usually only consider the first time just because I think it's so likely that we get an immediate reaction the first time we test those levels. So technically, like, I do see that we were setting lower lows because we had, this low, lower low, lower low, lower low. But like I said, on that trend, we would have had, that would have been our high. Then another lower high, and that technically was broken. So not necessarily in a downtrend anymore on the 5-minute. That being said, we break this low here, then I think it's bearish trend back on for this. And at that point, if we set a new lower low here, that's where I would start looking for a fib, something like that. Let's say we end up going down towards that level, very theoretical at this point. But if we got something like this, then I would be looking for a fib pull, something like this, and then hope to short somewhere in here. I'm tempted to try and swing along at this just because it's such tight invalidation, right? But I also don't have a Binance account anymore. I'm sure it's on one of the exchanges I have an account on, but I don't know what has good volume on it and stuff like that, but yeah, technically it is at support there. Oh, just failing here. You think words are difficult? Try and work a mouse. You guys. Oh no, not for me. I'm entertained. That's good stuff. You guys got to entertain me while I do this, right? Oh man, yeah, Bitcoin just never quite got up to the entry I was hoping for. That's unfortunate. But either way, on the 5 minute, that structure hasn't changed. So that's basically what I'm going to be looking for this evening. In fact, I am going to set an alert for if we start approaching those levels, and then I just want to keep an eye on things. Let me know once per minute. BTC check bearish Stuber. And that's just a way you can take a step away from the charts and carry on with your life, right? Especially when you're trying to catch an entry like that. I like to use alerts. I set them to go every minute so my phone won't stop annoying me until I deal with it. But yeah, I want to see if we do get up to those levels. I want to see what happens. I should actually probably set another alert down here. I'm actually going to do that because that would also change the structure, and I'd have to pull a new StuberFIB if we break past that, right? New StuberFIB pull. There. Now whatever happens in this range, I really have no interest in playing it until one of those things happens, basically. So that's why I have my alerts set there. Oh, yeah. And I'm itching to pull the finger on a Bitcoin short. I just, the fact is we're kind of at the middle of the range on the 4 hour. There is potential support there. Well, yeah, we'll just see what happens with this 5 minute range again, I guess. Either pull a new StuberFIB and hope to find a new short opportunity if we break or if we set a lower low, and if we go up towards those StuberFIBs, then I can reassess when we get there. I'll probably, since it's a 5 minute structure level, the reason I have my alert there is so that I can zoom into the 1 minute from there and kind of see what's going on. If we lose a 1 minute high or low kind of a thing, then I know that, hey, at least this is some sort of a signal that we're at my bearish targets here of where I want to start looking for shorts, and then I'll start building a position from there, basically. Where's my dab pen? That would be perfect for right now. Well, I want something exciting to happen on Ton or Bitcoin here, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So we'll just kind of see. Does anyone have any other questions about Bitcoin in general? I kind of went over my midterm, long-term approach, kind of some things that I'm watching and that sort of thing. Just in case some of you guys haven't been in my streams before, most of you guys look like familiar faces here, but I do also have my own smaller YouTube channel, StuTube Trading, all one word. I do post these in case you miss a live stream. I post these onto my YouTube channel right after, and as well I do share them to the Academy as well. And also subscribe to the Financial Summit. I am doing live streams there once in a while as well. That's these thumbnails, the ones without the faces and stuff. Yeah, just these live trading and whatever thumbnails. Those ones are me. So there's actually quite a few people who stream on there, or there's like 4 or 5 of us who stream on there randomly. So yeah, be sure to give them a subscribe as well, because I've been doing some random live scalping sessions and stuff like that over there as well. Just while we're waiting for something to happen here, why not look at my favorite shitcoin here, Luca. This is one that I've been talking about quite a bit lately. This is the most degen stuff I can get into, you guys. I want to be clear about this. We're getting into some real shit coins here. The market cap is only 89,000 US dollars. So obviously high risk. Don't get stupid with position sizes if you're playing with small meme coins like that or whatever. But yeah, it basically survived it got rug pulled right off the bat, and then there was a community takeover. I saw someone with a fairly decent size account start pushing it, so I got in at about a $30,000 market cap. So we'll see what happens with that one. But yeah, these are 100% gambles in my opinion. Well, guys, like I said, I really don't have anything I need to do with Bitcoin until one of these alerts gets hit. Basically, yeah, I'm looking for short opportunities if we get up towards 59.4. But if we break above 59.8, basically 59.9, then I think it's very possible that we end up going a little higher, even back above 60K from there. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for now. Other than that, if we end up setting a lower low at this point, then I'm also going to be alerted, and I will end up readjusting my Fibonacci's and looking for a new bearish pullback, right? Because again, I'm not going to FOMO into the position on the structure break. I'm going to wait until, and you know what, it might not happen. We might keep setting lower lows, lower lows, lower lows, and I never do get a pullback to any sort of 786. That's just trading sometimes, but that's what I'm going to be trying to do into the evening. So that's my plans. Anyways, legends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over. Hopefully you found this stream useful, educational. If you are interested in my absolute favorite indicators on the market, this is for, obviously you guys here with me live already have these, but anybody looking on my YouTube channel a little bit later, if you want to try out these indicators, there's a 10% additional discount on checkout with my link down below. That gets you access to the indicators I've been using every single day for over 2 years now. It also gets you access to the MDX ALGO VIP Discord. I'm personally doing most of my trading on Blofin these days, no KYC crypto exchange. There should be a link down below for that as well for those of you who just need a new non-KYC exchange or just want to back up in general. So with that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace. You know what? Let's just start recording again because, you know, just in case something interesting happens with Popcat here. Oh, Bitcoin is going right back up for that fib pocket. Well, now I don't know how many positions I want to open myself up to. Oh, I probably just did tag my 786 order. This is what I'm kind of going for with this one. This is what I'm going for on this one. This one's totally risk-free at this point. I need a way to play music or something while I'm looking at this. When I stream on the other place for Financial Summit, I can now throw little background tunes on and stuff. Don't want to accidentally throw on the wrong music and have YouTube shut me down, so... Yeah, I'm not sure if there's much for stats on the volatility like that. I'm sure there's some... Yeah, I don't know. I personally just keep my trading so simple. Simple strategies for a simple brain. I just basically draw colorful lines. Trade them. The more I look at this weekly chart, just the more bearish I get, to be honest. And again, as I spoke about earlier, I am happy to be wrong about this. You know, I will be just as happy as the next guy if we get something like that. But I just don't see it right now with this big RSI divergence. Was still just... Even though this wick did close above the candle bodies here, like we never closed below that, it's still just you know, same with this one, right? Oh, actually no, that's not true, because we obviously closed below these ones. Never mind. But I don't know, I want to see a lower high broken before I get bullish on this trend, or the RSI to break out of its downtrend. Just some sort of a warning. Actually, one other thing I wanted to look at, which was giving us support, is the Trendmaster indicator here. We are basically finding support right along support of this trend on the weekly. So there is that. Eventually that's going to break, but so far it hasn't, right? Even with this wick, we still got candle bodies closing above, so there is still that going for the price as well. If we saw a lower high reversal warning, this yellow W here, if we saw a lower high come into play with one of those, ooh, that would be a nasty signal. That could be a mean reversal. Something to watch for. Yeah, I agree. The fact that that bounce got shut down right at 65K, that just, I really thought that we could get up to 68. I thought, you know, if this relief, even if it remained a relief rally, but we did what we did the last three swings, it would have made sense that we got up to 68K, but we got up to 65 even and stopped dead in our tracks. Never even quite hit the 786. So yeah, I'd say that's a sign of weakness. And again, how many times do we break lower low, lower low, lower low before the floor actually gives and we get an actual breakout to the downside rather than just breaking structure and retracing? Like in all of these, like this market, this whole range here, this is all very healthy price action. That's just a classic lower low retrace, lower low retrace, lower low retrace. That's really all that's going on here. A very healthy trend. What happens if that very healthy trend turns into panic and an actual breakout? And to be fair, that can happen either direction. But so far, structure is just aiming to the downside the way I'm looking at it on a macro time frame like that. Kind of looks like the Wave Master is trying to warn that there's some volatility coming. Seeing some of these blue dots forming here. Still showing resistance here. Yeah, really, we've been ranging here since March, middle of March. We've been ranging here basically. I shouldn't say ranging. We're trading sideways. Technically, we are breaking the range repeatedly, but yes, it's just, well, I guess technically it's a diagonal range, right? So yes, I suppose we are technically ranging. But yeah, there hasn't really been a crazy breakout or anything. So I think that there's still going to be a much bigger move to the downside. It doesn't have to happen, right? Like I said earlier, the market doesn't give a shit about my opinions or my feelings. It's just a gut feeling. I have a feeling we're going to trend much lower than most people are willing to accept. Retail can acknowledge that there's a range here, but retail can recognize a range but hate trading a range. Retail loves looking for home run trades. They love looking for a weekly trend off of a 1 minute. um, so that's something to consider. Even if they see the range happening, they still won't necessarily play it right. Oh yeah, yeah. She's a well-defined range for sure. I just have a feeling that breakout's going to be to the downside. Just a gut feeling. I just think that with the RSI like this, I mean, to be fair, the RSI did find support right around halfway, right around the 50 level. But it's really hugging that 50 level. That could really change at any time. And basically, the main thing with this is, so the RSI is basically in the middle of nowhere, but it does have an obvious downtrend. And the thing to consider is a lot of people think that this was capitulation and that was a crazy sell-off and, oh, we're way oversold and shit. The RSI isn't even halfway down to the bottom. There is so much room for a big move to the downside there. To be fair, like I said, it is in the middle of nowhere, so that could break out of this downtrend and go to the upside right back into overbought conditions where it would actually be signaling a lot of strength rather than overbought, in my opinion. If we break all-time highs and we get an RSI back in here, I think that would actually be very bullish. But we don't have that yet, right? We still have our downtrend, so playing the trend, I think the RSI has a lot of room before it resets completely. Yeah, I mean, the thing is with the long short ratio, I mean, I'm never going to enter a trade completely off something like that, right? But it's something to consider. Is there more fuel for going a certain direction, right? Like if we're, trading into resistance and, we're trading into a macro Stuber resistance and the market is 70 or 75% long, that's a big red flag to me that, hey, you know what, there's a lot of fuel for this to be a big rejection. That's kind of how I look at that kind of statistic. It's not like I'll be much like bearish fundamentals, right? Like I went over with my TON position. I'm never going to take a trade, but just, I'm not going to short just because the market is retail is very long. But if the structure in the chart is also around resistance or something like that, depending how the chart actually looks, I'm more just considering it. So far, we're seeing that 786 rejection on Bitcoin. So we did end up getting up there eventually. Actually, you know what? That same thing happened to me. Where was it? Back here. When I was looking for this Fibonacci pull. I thought I missed it in my stream, but later we did end up getting up to that level. And that just kind of happened right now. So hopefully it plays out. Zoom into the 1 minute, see if anything gives me a red flag. And by red flags, I mean, like, let's say right now, since, just entered here, just looking at the immediate trend, the immediate downtrend. This is all that I care about now at this point because, since entering my position, that's all I care about. If we end up now that we've set a temporary low here, if we end up setting a lower low, that's where I can then confirm that I have a lower high on this little trend, right? And at that point, then I will think about updating my stop loss to a profit. But right now, the way the structure is, I don't actually have that. If we get that, I'll be able to protect myself. But until then, it's too early for me to do anything with this. Thanks for joining, Smallio. Have a good one. Actually, speaking of that, I am getting hungry. I think you guys kind of know what I'm looking at this point. Things I'm looking for. Ton, yes. Yeah, I was hoping for a little more excitement out of one of these, but still just kind of trading slowly. So anyways, again, guys, hopefully you appreciated this. If you did, if you're here with me live, if you could do me a favor once this gets shared to my YouTube channel, if you could go back and hit that like button, I would much appreciate that. As well, like I said, if for those of you, I think all of you guys are familiar, but yeah, I have my own YouTube channel, subscribe there. And as well, guys, I've seen a lot of people say they missed my live streams on the Financial Summit, because a lot of people aren't aware that I am streaming there as well. So do yourself a favor and give them a follow as well. And I do some random last minute live streams there randomly. So yeah, other than that, thank you guys so much for joining. Always love doing these with you guys. Hopefully you're enjoying them. Hopefully you're taking some value out of these. And with that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.